All right. Thank you so much for tuning in to our Workspace Spark TV. So today we have Paul Axtell. Paul is an amazing author. And if you have gotten your March to 2021 box, you have his book, Make Virtual Meetings Matter. And so we are so thrilled to have Paul on the call today. And Paul, we'll jump right on in. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, there's so many ways to answer that question. So I'm a chemical engineer by training, born and raised in South Dakota. Spent a long time in St. Louis. I'm a St. Louis Cardinal fan. Lived in New Jersey, lived in Minneapolis. Now I live in Phoenix.
Wow.
Basically a corporate trainer. That is, my career has been about personal effectiveness trainings, particularly in the corporate world. And then I just happened to write some books to kind of capture some of the thinking so it wouldn't disappear. So I like fly fishing, serial killer books. So it's probably all you need to know. I am married to Cindy. If you read the books, you'll see her referenced many times in those books, particularly the parenting book. And together we have 5 kids and 13 grandkids.
Oh, wow. I love it. So I have 5 kids of my own. So we don't have grandkids yet, but I am an only child. So I married someone with 4 kids. So I am excited for the big family.
Yes, they are kind of nice.
Especially when the grandkids, because then you only have to take care of them a little bit of time.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, of course, we are here to talk about Make Virtual Meetings Matter, the book that our subscribers did receive. But you are author, as you mentioned, of other books. And so I'm so grateful you were able to send me a few. I have children, and so the parenting one that really speaks to my heart, and I cannot wait to read it. So we'll just jump right on in. What was the inspiration behind your book, Make Virtual Meetings Matter?
Well, clearly the pandemic forced people to stay at home. And one of the good things about it was that for the first time, people became more thoughtful or at least concerned about the quality of their meetings. Now, meetings have been an issue for a long, long time. But for the first time, I think management said, well, we need to make meetings better. So actually, it just surfaced a problem that's always been there, but it was heightened by the virtual thing and people being concerned about the experience of people working remotely. So we simply took previous books that we'd written about meetings and said, okay, how might we just adapt that for the virtual setting? So it's really the pandemic and management's newfound concern for the quality of their meetings that led to this book.
Awesome. Yes, I have been a project manager for over 15 years, and most of my work has been remote, so going virtual is not hard for me. And then with the pandemic, or what we're going through right now, I had so many people reach out to me asking for advice on how to transition, especially as a project manager, to virtual meetings. And it came such second nature to me, I didn't even realize. So I'm sure this book is needed because it's something that I even saw in my own network of people that needed it.
Yeah, very good.
Um, so you had great success with your first book, Make Meetings Matter. Do you think there are major differences between in-person meetings and a virtual meeting?
Well, my first impulse is to say no, in that the same skills apply in both places, but there are some critical differences. Probably the most important is that it takes more time to do something virtually than it does in place. And so I recommend fewer topics and more time for each topic. I think the major loss is people don't have the experience of being part of the group. They don't feel like they belong. They don't feel like they're part of the community. And it's surprising how many people rely on meetings for their sense of community, their sense of belonging in the world. And that, you just can't replicate it. There's something about being in the room with somebody, plus all the kind of spontaneous conversations that happen when you're in the same room. You take a break, you chat, you make eye contact with somebody and say, hey, let's get together. So that loss of community is number one. I think the second thing is there's less safety, because if you look at psychological safety, we mostly get it from the physical closeness, intimacy that comes from unconsciously reading body language. So
Mm.
that when we speak, we notice people paying attention. If you look at virtual meetings, there seems to be more freedom not to pay attention. Why? Because you're not connected in the same room. It would be rude to pull out your phone right across from somebody while they were speaking. Well, so I think we lose psychological safety, and then as a result, we lose participation. And one of the large concerns that I've always had is there's less participation than we would like to have in group conversations. So you lose the wisdom of the group, you lose people feeling like they've got a voice, you lose kind of the quality of the thinking when participation goes down. And it goes down because a couple of reasons. Number one, it's harder for people to get into conversations virtually. And number two, we seem to be more concerned about getting through the agenda when we're going virtually versus in the same room. So I think that's the three major changes: the sense of belonging, this lack of psychological safety, and then participation levels tend to drop off.
Oh, I
Otherwise,
no, I totally agree. It's interesting. Psychological safety is something I never even thought about. And feeling like you can speak, because I often find my colleagues would not know, even in group and in-person meetings, not know when they could jump in. So I can only imagine that's even harder, especially if you've got 30 people on a virtual call, knowing when to jump in and how to do that. So I think those are great tips. And participation. I have noticed on calls, participation has been down. I think with Zoom and other platforms, they have tried to increase engagement with like typing in chat and raising your hand and adding emojis. But I do agree, it is hard to get people to participate, because you can turn your camera off. You don't even have to see people anymore. You can check your emails because you think no one's really paying attention. So I think all those things are really, really important.
well, you make a point, I think, and I don't know you, but just judging on our conversation so far, somebody like you who has no problem expressing yourself, no problem getting in, literally can't get how difficult it is for somebody who doesn't have that outgoing move to get into a conversation. Um, and also, if you kind of mentioned, if you look at when does psychological safety present? Well, if there's just two of us, it's present.
Right, right.
And if there's five of us, we're sitting close enough that we can sense each other. You get to 20, all of a sudden people are 20 feet away from you and people multitask. So yeah, it's a dilemma. And I think, again, the point being is I don't think people like yourself and many of the managers have any sense about how difficult it is for some people to get into a conversation.
Oh, I agree. I think, I mean, this is almost like public speaking, right? Which is supposed to be one of the hardest things for people. So even speaking in person, I'm sure speaking online, my problem has been speaking too much, right? And so I have, because I am outgoing, um, I can take cues in person in a room, right? When we're trailing to another topic, or someone else has a question, I can see. I have had to learn to pull back a little bit, or not overtalk someone, not knowing the cues when to jump in, where I could definitely see those cues when I was in person.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, in the room, if you walked in saying, I'm going to pay attention to getting more people in the conversation, you would notice the very subtle ways that people have of signaling they got something to say. They lean forward or they kind of raise their hand. Uh, you can't watch 20 screens and pick that up. You also, not laying this on you, but the number one complaint of people about meetings is the person who dominates the conversation and
Yes.
speaks longer and more often than they should. Well, so it's a gift when people like you recognize that and rein yourself in a little bit.
Oh yeah. You know how I learned? Because I was on a call and someone was dominating. I was like, oh wow, I think I do that. Well, at the beginning of the book, you mentioned changing perspective changes your experience. Can you elaborate on that, like how that is?
Sure. So if we kind of step a little farther away, if you look at what changes behavior, the number one thing is to change your point of view or your perspective or your framing. The moment you look at something from a different point of view, the circumstances are the same, but everything's different.
Right.
And by far, the most powerful example of that is choosing to be responsible for other people's experience. So mostly we're responsible for our own experience. But if you walked in the meeting saying, I'm going to be responsible for everybody feeling like they participated and were heard in a meeting, you would walk in and see things you wouldn't see otherwise. Or if managers chose the perspective, I'm responsible for the time and talent in the room and I will not disrespect that, then they would prepare for meetings, they would keep the meeting on track, they would work on participation. So and the most powerful perspective change everywhere in life is to treat everything like it matters. Treat this moment like it matters, treat working out like it matters, treat eating like it matters, treat the person you're with like it matters. You do that, and all of a sudden you are on the road to being remarkable because most people are not. So if you look at multitasking, you're not treating either of the things you're doing like it matters.
Hmm.
So perspective is the easiest way to change behavior. And with respect to meetings, the two are for the person leading, honor the time and talent in the room. And for the person participating, choose to be responsible for every meeting working. Like choose to own the meeting you attend. See, that's why is that special? Because the only people who currently own the meeting are the person who called the meeting.
Right.
Everybody else is kind of hanging out in this meeting.
Right.
Well, if you walk in and saying, I'm responsible for whether this meeting works, you've got a lot of work to do.
Right.
You've got to notice the people who aren't getting in. You have to notice the people who are interrupted. You have to notice when the conversation, but just think, if all 13 people said, I'm responsible for this meeting working, the meeting would work. You don't need any new skills. You just need everybody saying, I'm in this. I got this. Does
That
that
is
help?
that is so awesome because um oftentimes, especially with virtual meetings, right? I feel like we don't even give space for breaks, bathroom breaks, lunch breaks, whatever. We got back to back meetings that people are not um, honoring or respecting the meeting or going into it thinking like that. I mean, I can even think of times that I got a meeting coming up, not even prepping for it, even as just a participant. So I think that's important too. Great points. As a meeting leader or host, how can you create a positive virtual meeting experience? So you mentioned a little bit earlier, um, understanding as a manager that everyone cannot bring certain things to virtual meetings that they could in person, or having issues with that. So as a meeting or a leader host, because we have several managers and leaders in our in our network of subscribers, how can they create a positive virtual meeting experience?
Well, I think the first thing would be that everybody's got quality sound. Tone of voice is the most important thing. So if you need to buy equipment for people so they have quality sound, if that's the number one thing is sound. And it's much more important than video because tone of voice is a more accurate indicator of who I'm talking to
Mm,
and how you look because we're very appearance biased. Then I think it's about being on early so that the people want to connect, the people want to check out their sound, the people
okay.
want to say hello, can check in with you. It's like if you were meeting in person, you want the meeting rooms completely set up 20 minutes ahead of time so that you can greet every person who walks in. So you can say hello, you can introduce new people. So it's being on early, which you can't do back to back to back meetings and honor this. And then I think it's preparing so that when people will want to come to your meetings if you're prepared. And if you're doing back to back meetings, it's unlikely you prepare.
Right.
But if you're going to respect people's time, then you would have an agenda out ahead of time. You'd let them know here are the topics, here are the outcomes for every topic, and here's how I'm going to manage the conversation. So that would be it. Sound, preparation, and then being there early so people can check in with you.
That is good. I didn't even think about how we're missing the time of walking into the room and saying hi to everyone, grabbing some water, having a little small talk. How's your kids? I didn't even think about losing that with virtual. And so maybe even adding a little bit of buffer for that time.
Well, and it's because if we went back to talked about, I'm going to call them gimmicks. They're not gimmicks, but ways of increasing participation level through the chat and
Right.
polls. I think you only want to use those functions to deliver value. So if you really want the thinking of a group, okay, do a poll. But if you're doing a poll simply to keep people interested and keep them awake, that's, I think, inauthentic.
Right.
Uh, it's the same way with icebreakers. So now, how do you give the people that want to connect a chance to talk? So if we say, let's say you have one new member, then I think they should be given 3 minutes to say, okay, who are you? Tell us about yourself. What would you like to know? It would not be a good use of time for all 10 people or 13 people to catch up on life, which is also a point. Effective groups use a notion, Vanessa, of letting the group conversation speak for them.
Mm,
So you could, if you have a regular group of 20, you could say each session, I want 3 people to start by catching me up on what's happening in your world, what's happening in your life. But just 3 of you, and you get 2 minutes each. The rest of you, if you've got something really amazing, like a new grandchild, okay, then we're going to give you a minute. But the rest of you, I want the 3 people that speak to speak for you. So we don't have time to do 20, but we can do 3 each time. So there's ways to get people involved and engaged that are authentic that you don't have time to do with everybody. Does that make sense?
Oh, perfect. Since I'm thinking, I'm supposed to be interviewing you, but I am thinking of how to make my meetings better. I have a meeting with a group of people this evening, and something like that will help. I'm also thinking about making sure that people are heard and listening and paying attention to cues. I do think that people do cues online, but paying more attention and honoring that. So no, that makes total sense. Um, and the better use of our time. As a participant, though, so we always talk about the leaders and how the hosts are, but as a participant, how can you stay engaged virtually?
Well, there's been a lot written. You need to have a space that doesn't distract you. Um, and that means, what we can do, there's a difference, Vanessa, between events in life and patterns in life. We can handle the one time the dog jumps into your lap. We can't handle that happening every 5 minutes. You can handle one of the child running in with needing to talk to their mom or dad, but you can't have it as a pattern. So the question is, what patterns do we need to take care of in terms of distractions like background noise, interference? I think the other thing people have to, there's 2 kind of thinking that occurs that shapes how people participate that they're unaware of. One is the notion I don't have to say anything if I don't feel like it. Really? If you're a member of this group, you have to speak, you have to participate, you have to question. But people walk in
Exactly.
thinking the norm is I don't have to say anything if I don't feel like it. And the other is people actually think that multitasking is okay, that they can pay attention to 2 things at once. They're fooling themselves. It turns out there's only 2% of the people in the world who can actually multitask. The rest, you and I, are fooling ourselves. So it means no other work at the table, no distractions, so that all I've got is the screen. Um, Now, the other thing is preparation. So I think if this is why you would want an agenda ahead of time, if there's 3 topics, for every topic before I go to the meeting, what comments do I have to make about this topic and what questions do I have about it? So that when I'm there, I've already thought about ahead of time what I want to say or ask about the topic, which again, if you have back to back to back meetings, that's pretty tough.
Yes. And I never even thought about, um, I used to get a bunch of agendas for in person meetings, but now that we're virtual, I can't tell you the last time I had an agenda. Right. And so that lets the meeting ramble on, that gets us off topic. Um, and I mean, a lot of these points are just because we're in a virtual world doesn't mean that we lose those things that actually make meetings go smoother or more productive. So, because now I'm thinking about it, I haven't seen an agenda in a while.
Yeah, and if you're calling the meeting, I'm saying you're disrespecting the people's time by having them show up with no indication of what you're trying to achieve on every topic.
That is awesome. I needed this a few months ago. Maybe at the start of us going online. Um, do you think your appearance matters when you're attending virtual meetings? I mean, most of the virtual meetings are in your home. Do you think that appearance really matters?
Well, I appreciate the question. It's given the times we're in, how can anybody think it doesn't? I mean, we are so appearance biased. And if I don't know you, I'm going to make up a story about how you look or what's in your background. Um, let's just take background as a part of appearance. You want to be interesting and you want things in your background that give people an invitation to connect with you. Like, wow, whose bike? Is that your bike? And why is it so high? And um, if we look at appearance, if you and I know each other and we're friends, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It does not matter. But if there's people in the meeting that you do not know, and they don't have a history with you, their first move is appearance. They don't know it. They're not saying, wow.
Right.
They just get a sense, do I trust you? Are you professional? Are you prepared? So, yeah, absolutely it matters. And I think one of the important things is that, again, if it's 5 people you already know and you're a great team, and okay, then go casual. If there's a higher up person or somebody from outside the company, you should dress consistent with being ready for your next job.
Right. Right.
So I mean, casual dress is important. I mean, all of us love casual Fridays and getting up and not having just, but you can take that so far that people start to disrespect your thinking because of your appearance.
I totally agree. I saw recently on LinkedIn someone posted as, we're opening back offices and people are going back into offices that they have a new dress code that's dress for your day, which I thought was interesting. So if you know you have back to back meetings or you know that you have people who are in higher positions or clients, then you dress for that. But if you know that you have more of a lax day and it's only internal meetings and then you can dress for that day. So I had never heard that phrase before. And I thought that was very interesting that because it makes sense, right? There's no sense of saying you need to be in a button down suit if you're only meeting with internal teams, depending on your culture of your company. So I thought dress for the day was really important too. Um,
I like it. It's very similar to dressing for your audience. In this case, you're just scoping out the audience for all day. So yeah, I like it.
yeah, I saw that recently on LinkedIn. Um, do you think virtual meetings are here to stay? I know I've been doing keynote and speaking engagements virtual now, which I don't think I would have done that prior to where we are now. So do you think they're here to stay or do you think that we'll go back to more in-person meetings?
Well, I think they're here to stay for a couple of reasons. It allows people who generally want to work from home, let's say they're raising small kids, they can keep a job and work from home. It allows companies to get talent from around the world
Right.
versus in the same space. Um, it allows this whole work-life flexibility. So I got a soccer game this afternoon, but I don't want to miss that meeting. So there's a lot of advantages. I think, however, this whole thing about the wisdom of the group and people feeling like they belong requires some in place. If you look at collaboration, the key to collaboration is geographical distance. And if you can jump across a cubicle and have a 15-minute conversation when you want to have it, it's more likely to happen. So
Right.
I think it'll be there to stay. And let's say that you could spend 2 days at home and 3 days in the office.
Right.
People, that would work for a lot of people.
Yeah, I really think that companies are going to go to more of a hybrid
Yep.
role, like it's a few days in, a few days out. So good. No, I worked in project manager for 15 years, so virtual meetings were something that we did all the time, and I managed teams of people in different cities. But again, we became more like family, right? So we see the same people all the time. It is hard when we did have clients that we needed to talk to, um, because there are some things that happen in person that you just can't replicate online, especially with a new client or a new team member. So I'm hoping that people do pay attention to some of the things that you have in this book, because I wish I would have heard and known a lot of these things prior to where we are now. But now I can go back and incorporate them. I'm going to make a change in even my meeting this evening, um, so that I can honor a little bit more, because I can say that I probably have, been so focused on what I have to talk about that I did not honor the people in the room and making sure that they felt heard, even if, and making sure I have an agenda. So after I get off this call, I'm going to be putting an agenda together so they know what we're talking about.
Yes. Great. Good.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Paul. We really, really appreciate you taking the time out. And so, for those who are listening, if you do have our March box, you'll be able to get this book. If not, go online. So, Make Virtual Meetings Matter from Paul Axtell. And Paul, we really do appreciate you.
You're welcome. And if anybody would like to reach out with a particular question, you can just include my email, and I've got plenty of time since I'm not traveling.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much. And I look forward to reading this.
You're welcome.
Until next time.
Bye bye.